Hello and welcome back for another video with Allison Automotive. Now, I haven't posted anything to this channel for God knows how long, for ages. And I've got this job on at the moment where I'm doing an engine. I think that's just out of shot. And I'm doing a gearbox for a customer as well. And they are, both of them, quite dirty, need a lot of cleaning up. And the customer wants these painting as well. So I thought I'd do a video of me disassembling this IB5 gearbox for the Racing Puma and hopefully making a bit of a tidy job of it. So here we go, let's get to work. Now, as you can see in the gearbox, it's quite dirty in there, and I presume what's happening really is that through that input shaft seal, it's probably weeping a little bit through there and then just sort of splattering around the gearbox. Again, a bit dirty. Usual problem here, slight leakage out that sort of drive shaft seal there. And one of the other problems is that the box gets very contaminated inside the lower part of the box, and this push rod that affects the gear change just gets all contaminated inside the seal, and eventually it just starts creeping its way through that rod there and making a bit of a mess. And also at the back here where the end plate is for the fifth gear housing, you tend to get it sort of misting through that seal as well, through that gasket. The problem is, after it gets so dirty, you can't even tell what is dirt or oil anymore, you know, because it's so plastered in it. So we're going to clean it down first, and then take all the insides out, and then clean it down a bit more and paint it and make it look like hopefully brand new again. Okay, so it's time to disassemble the box. So there's that one. And that one. So for anyone out there who's having a go at this themselves, if it's their first go or something, and they've, you know, if they watch this video and they fancy having a go, just make sure you take a photo of this top area and just note the alignment of this fifth gear. Okay, so there's a clamp around this bar here. So you've just got to note the alignment of that when you put it back, and that's on a T40, a Torx 40 screw. And that looks like that. And then there's a circlip to deal with. Several minutes later. Got that. Put that to one side. And now for, just mop up a little bit. That's that. Now for another shitty, annoying circlip. Yeah, I've got that moving now. And now it's a question of just expanding it a bit and then getting your screwdriver underneath it and levering it out. Seems to be quite stubborn, this one. That's it. So onto the fifth gear removal. Now, if you haven't got this SPX kit, if you haven't got that to remove it, I don't think you're going to get it off, basically, because it's extremely tight. I'm going to use these bits at the bottom to clamp around there, and then that over the top, and that's it. And I'm going to hold that with a 32, and then use that one there. Might need a longer one actually, but well, it's not as tight, this one, as it usually is. It's quite easy actually. I think I'm just going to stick a, might see if I can get it off with this actually. Boom. Now normally that wouldn't be anywhere near powerful enough to get that off, but this one has been all right. So fifth gear housing to come off now with the T40 again, I think it is, yeah, T40. And then we can just fifth gear housing. Then you see the gasket. Now, whatever you do, don't try and reuse this gasket, because it's just not worth it. Now you just have to be careful you don't knock these out and they fly across the carriage. So just use a bit of tissue and a screwdriver. There we go. So that's one out. Two levers are quite handy here. So one in there and one in there. Okay, and we're in. And you've probably noticed that as soon as you take the magnet out, it's got a lot of swarf on it. This one isn't as bad. It's not too bad actually. What we're going to take out next, then we've got this pole here, which is like a location pole, and there's two circlips there. Now this isn't usually too bad to get out. I'm going to go for the lower one first. I think next I'm just going to pull this whole thing out. I'm just going to grab hold of that. Pull it all out. Then we've got this. So these come out and go back in together. There's that. So that's what you might call an open diff. So a non-LSD type of diff. So there's a fair bit in there, and all that area down in there, it gets very dirty and very contaminated. So we're going to empty that out somewhere. So you'll see how much comes out of here. a fair bit. Okay, so next I'm going to remove this bit here. And this part here contains the selector spring, which quite often snaps. And then I'm left in here with this selector gate. Now this, what I tend to do is clean that down really thoroughly and then mark on with a pen exactly where that sits within the screw, because there is a lot of area of movement in that as soon as you take it off, and it's, you know, it can be quite tricky to get it back in the exact correct position. Okay, I think we'll mark that now. I'm going to very carefully take that out and put it somewhere so I don't lose those markings, so it doesn't get worn off. And then the last piece of the puzzle is this selector rod right down at the bottom where it gets quite dirty and glued up. Just going to take that out as well. So you really have to get to this, and to clean that rod and change that seal, it literally is the last part. You've got to have everything out. Right, so I'm going to leave that now, and I'm going to assemble the box, you know, partly back again, and give all the outside casing a really good clean down.
You wanna hot body? You wanna Bugatti? You wanna Maserati? You better work, bitch. You wanna Lamborghini? Sit in martinis, look hot in a bikini. You better work, bitch. You wanna live fancy, live in a big mansion, party in France. You better work, bitch. You better work, bitch. You better work, bitch. You better work, bitch. Now get to work, bitch. Now get to work, bitch. Ring it on, ring it on. Won't stop now, just be the champion. Work it hard like it's your profession. Watch out now, 'cause here it comes. Here comes the smash up. Here comes the master. Here comes the big beat. Big beat to dance up. No time to quit now. Just time to get it now. Pick up what I'm putting down. Pick up what I'm putting down. You want a hot body? You want a Bugatti? You want a Maserati? You better work, bitch. You want a Lamborghini? Sit in martinis, look hot in a bikini. You better work, bitch. You wanna live fancy, live in a big mansion, party in France. You better work, bitch. You better work, bitch. You better work, bitch. You better work, bitch. Now get to work, bitch. Now get to work, bitch. Break it up, break it down. See me coming, you can hear my sound. Tell somebody in your town. Spread the word. Go call the police. Go call the governor.
I think I'm going to take this drive shaft seal out now as well. So I generally sort of knock in one side and then lever it out the other side, but because there's nothing else in there, that's come out quite easy. Put that on there. Looks pretty perfect to me. So the reason I use that oak block is you just have to be careful you don't sort of damage all that front edge. And if you use anything metal, it tends to just kind of destroy that front edge. So that's all good.
I bring the trouble, they bring the trouble on. I make the bubble on, call me the bubble on. I am the bad bitch, the bitch that you're loving on. Hold your head high, fingers to the sky. They gon' try and try ya, but they can't deny ya. Keep it moving higher and higher. Keep it moving higher and higher. So hold your head high, fingers to the sky. Now they don't believe ya, but they gonna need ya. Keep it moving higher and higher. Keep it moving higher and higher and higher. Work, 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 work,
Okay, so this is the day after the painting and we've got a nice clean looking gearbox here. So we just need to rebuild it now. Try and lever it apart without spoiling my paintwork. So I think we'll do it in reverse order. So we'll install this push rod at the bottom, which is somewhere over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to chuck that boot away because I've ordered a new one. And I think I'm just going to clean around there a little bit. So I've got these soft grip things for the vise, just so you don't sort of scratch the metal, which is quite handy. It looks a little bit harsh, this thing, to look at, but it's actually produces a really nice finish. Make sure that's really nice and clean before you push it through the seal. So just got to make sure I get this the right way around, which is that way around. So I push it through that new seal. Lock thread, here we are. Loctite 270. It's pretty good stuff. It's just getting the damn stuff out, which can be challenging. Here we go. I haven't got a camera shot inside the box, I'm afraid, but if you're doing this at home, I'm sure you've kind of get the idea. Okay, so next I've got this contraption here, and you'll notice the left and right sort of rock of that is where the spring is, and quite often they snap, which is really annoying because the gear stick has a kind of a mind of its own. This isn't snapped, it's okay, but I'm going to change it anyway because they are really prone to snapping. And there's no way I'd kind of put that back without changing it. So I'll just give it a little clean. See what the best way to mount it is. So something like that. I'm going to use my soft jaws again. Okay, so I'm just going to lift that sort of rocker thing off, and then there's another circlip the same underneath it. Just going to get to that, kind of pull that off, and then we can just lever this spring off. Here's the replacement spring. It's not painted like that one, it's just a sort of a raw steel 1005672 is the part number. And I'm going to install it, if I can get the damn thing out, I'm going to install it exactly the same way that it's on there. Back on with that. Now that sits in the middle of that spring. That's perfect. And back on with that circlip. Boom. Okay, so I'm going to pop that on there. You've just got to be careful that the bottom of that connects down into the right place, and also the bottom of that. Okay, so this and this has got to go down together like so in there. A bit fiddly, and it's got to connect down into that selector arm as well at the right place. Bit fiddly that, so there's actually 4 points of contact there that have got to line up. Okay, right, the next little job, I think this input shaft seal, I think we're going to do that next. I don't change this on every job, but the inside of the bell housing looks so dirty, it looks like it has been sort of seeping through there. So I think I'm going to change it. It's one of those seals that from the bell housing it looks like it's back to front. So you just have to make sure that you install it the right way. Okay, so I've got a piece of steel here that's pretty much the perfect size, I would say. Get the fine adjustment tool. Just make sure it's dead level. And that's perfect. Okay, so next I'm going to put this selector gate thing in, and remember we marked it exactly where it was before, so want to get that absolutely spot on. Okay, spot on. Looks good to me. So I'll slot that in. Oh, slot it in or throw it in, you know. Okay, so next step is to put these gears back in. This is quite tricky, this. You kind of need 3 hands, and it's a bit fiddly. So I'm going to put this reverse gear in place and make sure it just sits on that thing there that sort of lifts it up and down, and make sure the magnet is nice and clean before it goes back in. So slot that in so you don't forget it. These two things need to go back in as well, and hopefully before you took this lot out, if you're doing it for the first time, you really need to take a picture of the alignment of all these pieces, because it is a bit faffy, to say the least. That is now about right. You've got to get these in the right place now before you put those in, otherwise you've had it. Okay, so now you've got to pick all this up, make sure that that goes through there, and try not to sort of break that bearing bit down there where the crown wheel is. And I've also, the input shaft that's going to go through that new seal, I've wiped it as well around there, so that the contact point, just in case there's any dirt on that, that's going to get into the new seal. So I've wiped that, and here we go. Now sometimes this goes perfectly first time and you get it in a few seconds, and then other times you can be faffing about with it for ages. I need to get over there a bit. Now before I let that drop through there, I'm going to try and get the reverse gear up. This is the bit where you need another hand, I think. So that crown wheel, you have to be really careful that doesn't knock out. So for this, just so that I can see in there really well, I'm going to use this little head torch because this is really good. And my specs. Okay, so fifth gear, so reverse gear seems to be a bit stuck. There we go. It's looking good, it's looking good to me. Well, hey, we're in. That was definitely one of my smoother attempts. Right, very happy with that. So now, just need to clean off around there, make sure that's really spotless, and seal the other half of the casing on there. Okay, that's good. And then just check the other half. That's not so good. Doesn't look like I've cleaned this yet. Could have been nasty if I'd forgotten that. And I'm just going to grab these. I'm going to put the lower one on first. Grab it with a pair of pliers and push it into place. So off camera, I've just cleaned up around that upper half. Just cleaned the mating face of that. No point in filming it. I'm just going to make sure that this is nice and clean, because you really don't want to be doing it again. So you have to apply this really precisely. You don't want to glue it all up like the magnet and get the magnet stuck. So really carefully. Okay, then I'm just going to sort of flatten it down a bit and spread it out with my fingers a little bit. Just go round these bolt holes. Right, let's give it a go. I think we're ready, aren't we? Yep, we're ready. Let's do it. Boom. Okay. Let's get the persuader. So these are M8 by 40 flange head bolts. So if you're going to reuse that earthing stud, you need, count the bolts, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm just going to take this down bit by bit first, and then just make sure that these bearings still move, so that I can fit those back in. Okay, so now you should see a fairly nice even bead of sealant sort of squeeze out from all around, and that is it. Well, not completely, but so that's lifting up, that's all fine. Oh, you can see that other one lifting up now as well, so they're not sort of jammed up in there, which is really good. So now I need to install those back like that. See if I can get those in there. And same with the other side. Just going to hold it in that position and then slot this one in. And I think while I'm at it now, while I've got this flat on there, I'm going to install one of these drive shaft seals that goes into each side. And I've got the L-ring version here instead of the Ford one, because the Ford one's about 20 quid a pop, whereas these are about half the price. And these work perfectly well. I wouldn't like to change this one with the gearbox on the car. It's a really awkward place to get to, actually. The other one's a bit more feasible, but they're both really awkward to get to. And you'll notice that originally they sit just a few millimeters into the box, so this socket that I've got, a 41mm that I use for the engine mount, this actually is an absolute perfect fit into there. Just to tap it that extra couple of millimeter. And that looks pretty perfect. Okay, so next we're on to the fifth gear housing, and you do need to use a new gasket here. Don't try and reuse the old one. Got to fit a new one. 1339-302. About 40 quid from Ford, or 38 or something like that. Bit expensive really for a tiny cork gasket, but what are you going to do? And then just going to check that it is nice and clean on the other side. Goes down on there. And you should see when you've squashed that cork gasket down a bit, that these bearings come up exactly level with the fifth gear housing. So I've just been warming up this this fifth gear on my bench here. I'm just going to warm it up a tiny bit more, because it's so tight. You've really got to bang it on hot. Okay, here we go. 38mm Alcon piston. Yeah, see, this is nearly down already. Nearly there. Might be breaking this bench in half, I don't know. I think we're nearly there actually. Just see if this circlip will fit in there. Oh, it does, we're in. We're in. Now the last one I did took a hell of a lot more bangs than that. I was there for ages banging away at it. But that one's gone down pretty nicely. There we go. The circlip's a bit misshapen, but that's absolutely fine. Now it's just touching the 5th gear now, so you just got to carefully get it. So you just got to watch that you get it down into the 5th gear without all that shooting out and all these little bits flying out the thing. And then as soon as you get it down to the bit where the circlip is, you get that circlip in. There you go. And then there's this kind of like, I don't know what to call it really, like a kind of it's kind of an activation thing for the 5th gear. Now this is quite important, this bit, so you've got to make sure that this kind of screwdriver slot in there comes to the right point. And if you took a photo of that when you started, you'll notice that it's nowhere near it. So you have to just lift up the reverse gear a little bit. Should be able to just move that up nice and easy. Oh, there we go, yeah, there we go. So now, once you've got it into that right place, and this thing that I've just slotted on there just goes a tiny bit higher than the actual pole underneath it. So the pole underneath it just fits like a millimetre underneath it or something. And that now that I've got that up, that should be in the exact same position as what you started with. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean this end plate now. The original sort of sealant on there is quite tough stuff, so it needs a bit of cleaning. Okay, so I'm just going to double check that this is really nice and clean. And again, just make sure you use a really good quality sealant. I think we're good to go. So I think the original bolts for this are M6x10 flange head bolts. They're a bit harder to get, so I've got M6x12, which are a bit easier to get. Job's a good one, and you should get a nice sort of fine line of beading all the way around that end plate, which I'm just going to leave and not going to touch. Anyway, so I'm not sure whether this was like a how-to video, like a tutorial, or whether it was just showing my work, but you know, maybe it was a bit of both. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. It's been a while since I've done one. Maybe it won't be as long before we get another one out, but we'll see. Anyway, take care. Bye.